Yes, guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. This is your evening update. I hope you're all happy and healthy doing the things that you love. For those you love to do them with, do me a favor, guys, smash that granny out of the like button, if you know what I mean. Hit the subscribe button if you don't mind. If you haven't already, hit the notification bell and drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts on today's topics. We've got a few little stories that's going to bring to your attention. Hopefully it won't be too long, but I did promise you an Orkun Kokcu sort of scout report, if you like, because he is being linked with everybody around the Premier League right now, an unhappy player in Benfica, but he's not part of the no dickheads policy. He might be going to Besiktas, but at the moment, that story is not necessarily developing at the same framework, at the same sort of rate as people were hoping for. And so there's now stories out today that he might be coming all the way over to the Premier League. And if so, then Tottenham are on high alert, an 8 and a 10, and he's got some output on him, let me tell you. Before we get to that, guys, a quick little roundup of what else is going on in the world of stories. First and foremost, there's a Football London article out here from Lee Wilmot, who's head of football, who's sort of talking about Manchester United's dithering and delay that may, in fact, sort of hold them back and spoil the deal for them to sign Brennan Johnson. I mentioned in the previous video that they have set themselves a sort of timeline to get the deal done. That passed today. There's an internal deadline. I don't know why they set it for themselves, because the ball is in their court. The last bid that they put in was rejected, and they don't want to go any higher than what they paid for Mathys Cunha. They've had two bids rejected of £55 million and 62.5. Sorry, £55 million and £62.5 million, and they haven't returned to the Bees with a third proposal. Now, I did also mention to you on the last video that it wouldn't surprise me if Brentford turned around and said, actually, you're not going to go. Because, look, I just think that there's a few teams that are knocking around, doing a few bits, doing a thing or two about a thing or two with the teams that are coming up, which might, start to make people like Brentford, teams like Brentford, look over their shoulder. They've lost basically all of their entire training team, their staff around the managerial spot have come across the Tottenham, apart from their free kick specialist. And they've got a new manager in place. They're likely to lose a couple other players. Rico Henry hasn't returned from injury. He's so injury prone. Norgard's already gone. Flecken's gone. Is Visser going to go? Is Sade going to go? Is Mbeumo going to go? If they do lose one or two of those players, then I think that Brentford are going to really struggle to be able to bring in improvements that will not that won't necessarily be enough for them to consider themselves completely free of the jeopardy of relegation. And that to most teams means far more than missing out on 50, 60 million pound on a player that's going to get you 25 goals. And like I say, the difference between Mbeumo and Visser leaving or staying could be European football on the upside, and certainly could be Championship football next season on the downside. So it's not particularly clear, and I think you could say it's somewhat opaque, if I'm entirely honest, around how it is that Brentford are going to move forward in a world where they don't sell, or they do, Brian Mbeumo. But there's a story here from Football 365 that is sort of launching into that sort of narrative a little bit. And it's running with this idea that could Tottenham come back in for Brian Mbeumo? What about Mohamed Kudus? That deal, well, Tottenham are about to make a fourth bid, I think it is, to try to get the job done. Kudus has apparently, as I said earlier, already rejected Bayern Munich, who came in and picked up the phone, called the agent allegedly and said, look, Musiala's out. We're thinking about bringing you in. We need to do some work. Bayern Munich obviously have got Luis Diaz in their sights. Luis Diaz, I'm not sure whether he's coming or going at Liverpool. Liverpool, following the tragic loss of Diogo Jota, are they now going to be forced to kind of go again in the market? If so, would they come in and potentially look like an Mbeumo, or will they go and look in a different direction? Maybe a Rodrigo, if they were to sell a Luis Diaz. Will Rodrigo go to Manchester City? There's links about that. And certainly maybe Bayern Munich could also come in and put their hand up for that particular equation. There's lots of things going on. But this particular story regarding Tottenham Hotspur is that Richalison is likely to be sacrificed if Spurs manage to land Kudus. That's from Football Insider. Obviously, Football 365 are just sort of representing that story, which is an interesting one, because I don't really see Kudus as a 9. I actually think his best output, I think it's statistically relevant, if you actually look at his career, his best output in terms of games played versus goals, like minutes per goal, minutes per assist, he actually got his best ratio, especially if you even include the variable of the fact that he's doing it in this position, which is an unlikely source of output, is an 8. I think this guy is a brilliant 8. I'm sure he doesn't want to play there. I think he's certainly coming in as a right winger to mix it up with Brennan Johnson and Odegaard. Odegaard was experimented in as a tenant towards the tail end of last season. Could that be where Tottenham end up seeing him? Thomas Frank will have a new set of eyes and a new set of opinions on that particular thing. But if the story here from Football Insider is that Tottenham will sacrifice Richalison in the pursuit of Kudus, then they're making the assumption that Kudus will be coming in to play as a 9 alongside or in competition with Dominic Solanke. I don't think that will be the case unless, of course, Tottenham do go to a back 3 and end up with 2 strikers at the top end of the pitch. But even then, I think you have other variables, other options that you can use in that situation, like a Sonny, where I said on a previous video, I think Sonny actually is a player that might get a second lease of life in a Tottenham system where he doesn't have to play 70, 80 minutes every game, where he can play sort of 25, 30 minutes at the end of games, bring him in for big moments in big games maybe, and certainly in a new system and playing as an inside forward rather than a wide guy with that need to take players on. I definitely think that there's some method to that madness. But if Richarlison is the sacrificial lamb, and I'm not suggesting that that's the case, but if he is going to go, if there are genuine interests in him and he is willing to leave, it might be an interesting situation whether or not you could have a conversation with Brentford and say, would you like to do a player cash deal and Richarlison go in a different direction? Both players don't have to leave home. Both players can get minutes in their new team. I'm not sure if that would suit Richarlison. It might be something to consider as we move forward. But what I would think is that if Richarlison is being positioned here as the sacrificial lamb, then it probably lends more into the story that Sonny really isn't going. He has decided to stay and that he's going to run down his contract at Tottenham. And then after the end of next year, go off into the sunset and get his, whatever it will be, €500,000 a week or something playing in Saudi. So good luck to him. As I say, it's a little bit of a cop blow. I think we have situations. I think a lot of teams around Europe right now have got situations where 1 year left on your contract, essentially the value, the player, the leverage, is in the player's hands. And consequently, I think that we have to sort of shake hands that maybe we're not going to be able to move him on. With Mathys Tel coming in, Johnson isn't going to go anywhere. I doubt Odegaard is going anywhere. Micky Moore might be going out on loan. But really then it leaves you with 2 abilities to create space in the squad. One of them would have to be through a sale of Manuel Solomon, and the other one would have to be through a sale of probably Richarlison in order to create and carve out enough space to be able to replace them with 2 players that you want. Other than that, it's going to have to be just a Mohamed Kudus as the only forward line improvement if everyone else seems to be cop blocking and staying put. So get ready for that outcome, guys. But that's not a Tottenham problem. Well, it is a Tottenham problem, but it's not a problem that started with Tottenham. That's a problem that just comes with the player leverage. I wanted to move forward, guys, and talk to you. Before I come to Orkun Kokcu, I want to talk to you a little bit about this other story that's going around on Give Me Sport. They are seemingly desperate to put together a story that Tottenham are going to bring in another player. And this player that they're talking about right now is, this is Give Me Sport's Will Lancaster 4 hours ago. He said he's trying to make the argument that that Dusan Vlahovic of Juventus fame, who's looking for a new home, seemingly unwanted at Juve. Obviously, we had the Paratici relationships that could go into Juve and maybe make things happen. Well, there's a couple of stories that are percolating here out of Juventus today. First and foremost is this one that they're trying to put together, this idea that the Serbian has been basically touted for a move away for quite some time, and that he's maybe looking for his chance at the Premier League. I'll be entirely honest, I haven't been that impressed with Dusan Vlahovic in his time at Juventus. I think he's got about a 40%, 4 in every 10 games he gets a goal at Juventus. It's not the greatest in returns for a player that was far more lethal when he was younger in a Fiorentina system. He was just smashed all the expectations out of the water. At Juve, coming with a high price tag and a big salary demand, he hasn't really hit the ground running, in my opinion, and lived up to those expectations. I don't think he can necessarily handle the pace of the Tottenham Hotspur style of football in this system and under a Thomas Frank system. I wouldn't be against it, but I think that sometimes Tottenham fans would be leaning into this narrative more because he comes with a big brand name, more so than what he can actually deliver on the pitch. I personally think if he's going to come to the Premier League, the best place for him to sort of show his level would be at a Fiorentina type level team in the Premier League. And I would say that the best fit for that would be like a Nottingham Forest, where I think that Chris Wood needs to be replaced. And Chris Wood, of course, did an absolute wonderful shift last year for them. And I think in the way that Nottingham Forest play football, the way that they can break, the way that they can lob balls in, I think that Dusan Vlahovic, with his strength in the air, with his overall kind of physical power, if not necessarily all of the sort of technical stuff, I think that he would be a wonderful fit there. I actually really like to see it. I'd love to see him in the Premier League to see what level he really is at. But for me, the idea that he's coming to Tottenham simply because Juve and Tottenham seem to have some sort of relationship because of the relationship with Paratici. I'm not sure. He's on £315,000 a week in Syria. Wherever he goes, he won't be getting that unless he goes to Saudi. And so 33 goals in 75 games. There you go. Is the number. They're saying it's a solid acquisition in Turin. I'm not sure he's really sort of lived up to expectations. I know a lot of Tottenham fans really like him, but not for me. Let's move on from that story, guys, and quickly move. Staying with Juventus, we've got a story here regarding Juventus midfielder Douglas Luiz is now keen. This is from the Boot Room to return to the Premier League amid interest from Manchester United and Tottenham Hotspur. Douglas Luiz left Aston Villa last summer mainly due to the club's PSR concerns. Emery would have ideally preferred to have kept the Brazilian, but after a season at Juve, Luiz is ready to return to England, and his representatives and intermediaries have been given permission by the Italian club to look for a move. Luiz struggled under Thiago Motta in the earlier part of last season, and things did not improve under new boss Igor Tudor. The Brazilian made just 3 starts in Serie A, and ahead of next summer's World Cup, sources close to Luiz confirmed that the midfielder is concerned about how his situation might affect his chances for Brazil. Here's the bit. United and Tottenham are interested in Douglas Luiz. Why wouldn't they be? That he's a fantastic player. For me, I have to ask the question, though, why is it that he is so unbelievably not wanted? Why is he so unwanted in Italy? Is it just the horses for courses thing? Is it just a clash of personalities? Well, the fact that he hasn't fit in under 2 different managers and is getting next to 0 minutes, is there just a massive fall off in the player? Has something changed in his personal life? He really isn't wanted. And yet, in terms of the specifics of Tottenham Hotspur, and they're interested in the player, Juventus are interested in Yves Bissouma. Now, don't get me wrong, Yves Bissouma is a hell of a player when he wants to play, when he's focused and when he's entirely up for it. But he does have a little bit of that clumsy gene, that sleepy gene, that he's not really paying attention all the time. For what it's worth, I'd say the same thing for different reasons, but about Bentancur, when he's been asked to play in the 6, he loses concentration, loses his man, especially when Tottenham had possession in the rest defence last year. He was never touch tight to his sort of opposite number, his counterpart that was the major threat in transition. And so I don't think we've solved for that 6. I'm not sure Douglas Luiz is the 6 that we would have wanted under the Ange Postecoglou system. I was calling for a long time for like a Polinia style, but actually in a double pivot system that plays with a slightly deeper line where you have fullbacks doing their natural overlapping on the outside, I could make the argument and certainly get on board the idea of Douglas Luiz coming in. He's a box-to-box player, but I definitely think he has that muscle, that tenacity when he's on form. Now, again, I'm not sure why it is that he's so out of favour. But if there is truth to this story, that Juve are interested in Yves Bissouma and that we're interested in Douglas Luiz and that there's some potential idea here, this is what's been banded around for the last few days, and I'm on board it on paper, that we could do a cash plus money swap deal for Douglas Luiz, although, of course, those things, it's difficult to do those deals, so you do them one at a time, sort of similar to how we did James Maddison with, was it Ollie Skip, I think it was, or Harry Winks, whichever one it was, with the Leicester deal. If Juventus are really interested in Yves Bissouma, and we've been paying attention to Yves Bissouma's sort of sloppiness at times, and his sort of carefree attitude or whatever at times, as I say, when he's on, he's great. I'm wondering why it is that Juventus would be wanting to get rid of him and bringing in Yves Bissouma. Because for me, that's a bit of a flag. I'm not sure what colour the flag is, but I certainly want to think about this. Is there just something going on with Douglas Luiz's motivation that you would actually prefer to have Yves Bissouma? I'm not sure. It's on paper, though, not knowing that, it's an unknown, and we can figure it out if the story heats up. But Douglas Luiz to Tottenham, I think, would be fantastic. It would be a real game changer in terms of our strength, in terms of our options, in that sort of deeper lying double pivot. I still don't think he's a 6 that we're technically looking for, but in terms of an improvement, I think he's certainly an improvement on Bissouma. And if Bentancur is sort of stalling on his own new contract, and we don't know about that, I've heard rumours that there might be troubles. I've also heard rumours saying, don't worry about it, it's done. But there's no update. Then I'd love to see Douglas Luiz. I would absolutely love to see Douglas Luiz come in, and we'll talk about that if that story comes up. Let me know your thoughts. Next up for you guys is Orkun Kokcu. I wanted to get this story out to you tonight. He's been linked with Tottenham, Benfica, pro, 24 years old, I think he is. Turkish international midfielder. For me, I think he's established himself as one of the best talents in his particular department of football in the game. Came from Feyenoord towards Benfica a couple of years ago. It's fallen out there. I'm not sure again what's happened. I've got no interest in calling this guy part of the dickhead's policy, but he said he apparently doesn't want to go back to Benfica, doesn't want to turn up for pre-season training. He wants out, which has put a lot of the major teams on alert. He's certainly very capable with both feet, but for what it's worth, he's right-footed. 30 million euros is his transfer market valuation. Super technical guy, but can play in the 8, by the way, can also play in the 10. If you're looking for a guy... I mean, I'll tell you what, I looked at his best highlights on the Y Scout, and it was almost like a YouTube highlight reel, seeing him score about 15 goals from outside the box. He loves a shot from distance, a bit like Pape Sarr, but this guy can actually find the net rather than row 43. He contributes super offensive football, 75 career goals out of the 8 that drifts into the 10. He had a fantastic 24-25 Champions League performance against Juventus that was really memorable for me. In my notes here, I've got his work rate, which is something I'm always looking for, right? You can teach skills, you can teach tactics, you can teach specifics of nuanced criteria of what you want out of a player, but you can't teach effort and you can't teach desire. But he has that in spades. He can work in a 4-3-3 in Benfica or a 4-2-3-1, which is probably going to make up 75-80% of the times that Tottenham are going to play a certain system. It will be under that system. And so for me, I think that he's a really good fit for our model if we're looking for someone that can sit in the 8 and play a little bit more aggressive and offensive. I'd call him, he's obviously dynamic box to box, right? But I certainly think that he can. He's more known. His highlight reels will show you more of his offensive stuff, but do not think that he can't get stuck in and body people. He's very, very, very strong. He's fantastic stamina, can read the game super well. Massive fan of this guy. I think he won Eredivisie Player of the Season in 2022. When he was at final under Arne Slot, believe it or not. I can't imagine Liverpool are going to come in for this guy because they just don't need any more help in that regard. But absolutely insane. Although maybe Liverpool are going to be interested. I'm trying to think right now with the Jota news. Are they going to have to go through a couple more reshapes? I'd be surprised, but for sure there's noise that Tottenham are interested, especially with Bruno Lage. The fallout there with Benfica that happened last year is certainly something that will be the sort of catalyst to get something done. Now, Roma, Inter Milan, AC Milan, they're all interested. Besiktas is still, I think he's expressed a preference to go there, but they're not paying the money. They haven't got the money, allegedly, until Saudi come in to be able to get that move happening. Although, apparently, allegedly, the player is willing to forego outstanding payments from Benfica that he's owed in order to sort of facilitate that deal. So his preference is to go to Besiktas. Whether or not that works out, I'm not sure. And of course, at the moment, there's a lot of money flowing into Turkish football, a lot of weird and dodgy deals. So I'm not going to spend too much more on this situation. But for me, I would imagine that 40 million euros would be enough. 45 million euros would be enough to get this guy. He's a sensational talent, and I think he would be a brilliant player in the Premier League. I really do like him. I'm just a little bit concerned that his preference is to go back to Turkey. Turkish guy wants to go back to Turkey. It makes a lot of sense. But listen, at the same time, they've got a part of the money. Benfica are not pushovers. Benfica always have a price. They're always willing to deal, but they get their money. They get their pound of flesh out of the deals every single time. And I would be surprised if Besiktas, absent some sort of underhand support here, are going to be able to afford that. But we shall see, guys. We shall see. Really, really interesting player and someone that we would love. I think we should love to see at Tottenham, but whether it happens or not, I'm not entirely convinced. And last story for you guys, Christian Romero. That story's not going away, is it? There's rumours out today that apparently Atletico Madrid are willing to up their bid. Although, as far as I've also seen, they haven't actually put in an official bid yet. Other stories are taking this story and running with it and saying that Tottenham are willing to let something happen for a cash plus player swap deal. Conor Gallagher's name's back on. I find it all a little bit lazy, if I'm entirely honest. It doesn't make any sense. Conor Gallagher was an Ange desire, not a Tottenham desire. Ange is gone. Don't think we need Conor Gallagher. Not that sort of caliber. He didn't want to come to us then. Why would we want him now? But that story's out there. As I say, the rumours are that Madrid, Atletico are willing to come back in and raise their money, but are still some way off. 70 million is the asking price. I think this one will drag out and out and out. And according to other reports, by the way, Romero is seemingly willing to stay and happy to stay if he doesn't get his move. But I think that Romero's sort of vacating of his throne, if you like, at Tottenham will actually enable a little bit more sort of a transfer merry-go-round that Tottenham could benefit from as the window progresses. I'm not entirely convinced that Tottenham fans will be entirely impressed or happy with the idea that Tottenham would sell him and go and get a Coney de Winter or, for example, a Scalvini. But for me, I think those guys are more than adequate debutants, if you like to come into that position. And on top of that, I think that would save some budget to be able to go and get a bit more sort of creative with our spend with regards a 6, with regards an 8, with regards a striker if Richalison was to leave. That's the end of the roundup for you guys. Not much more to speak to you about tonight. So I will either do a live stream a bit later on, about 10:30, or I will see you tomorrow morning, bright and early. Like, subscribe, and comment. Let me know your thoughts. And this is all on audio platforms, guys. I am trying to push the audio stuff. So please, if you get a second, go downstairs and get the Apple Pods and the Spotify links. Go in there and hit the follow. And if you fancy giving me a rating, I'd really appreciate it. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, bye-bye.